Well, I think, you know, it's the same as we've done at the last two stops. You know, I think that we've shown the ability to recruit and develop student athletes athletically and academically. That doesn't really change. I think, you know, we've played at different levels, even at the University of Houston, and playing SEC and Big 12 teams and winning those games. And being in the other league. So, you know, it's our recruiting philosophy is not going to change. You know, hopefully, you know, we can retain, because of our location, you know, the great players in the state. But obviously, we're going to have to branch out and be in California and be back in Texas and all points in between.
Well, good thing that you got kind of that Texas experience and you're familiar with that environment.
Yeah.
And here on the West Coast, what are you looking to bring to the team to kind of change that makeup outside of the players, the model, the team dynamic, the focus?
You know, that's all part of you know, what you do, your communication with your players. I think that. You know, it wasn't completely broken either. I think that you know, everybody looks at things in different ways. We've got some dynamic players on the team. One of the most explosive players in the country is there right now, and so there's others like him. I think you know, you look back at our season last year and just looking at where we were. You know, with 6, 7, or 8 freshmen that are single first-year players on the field on defense, that's bad. You know what they say, the best thing about a freshman is he becomes a sophomore.
Yeah,
so
right.
It's a little different for us in football. We don't have one and dones. So those guys are when they're on the field, they're doing the thing. But we've got a young team, but fortunately a lot of guys that have played. And I think our energy level because of that is high, and these guys are work in progress. But I like you know, how they've worked since we've been there.
Okay. Final question: what's the advantage that Arizona brings that you can sell? What's the advantage there?
Oh, we've got Tucson. Yeah, so we've got great university. Just a fabulous campus. I think, you know, as people get to know more and more about what our campus looks like, what our brand of football is like, what our administration is about, with President Robbins and Dave Hickey is our athletic director, there's a vision there, and a vision that they communicated clearly to me, that they want to win and compete for championships in all sports, including football. And in a lot of places, you know, you get that, but, you know, we've always started on an indoor practice facility, going through a bunch of stadium renovations right now. And so, you know, I've done this long enough to know that, you know, in certain places they'll tell you that before you get there. And then as a football coach, you learn what the word rendering means, because that's all that's up there for 2 years. You know, it's
passing it down.
Park a bulldozer out there for 2 years and wait for the money to come in. But we've already started. I think that shows their commitment, and you know, that's what you want. You want to have a chance to compete on a level playing field with the other people in your conference, and our administration's given us that.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, thank you.
When it comes to the recruiting side of things, when you look at the family element when you're trying to recruit a kid, how much does the family role play into it? And hiring a family member to be a coach, practically or not, does that serve as a benefit? And do you think that could be a growing benefit in football like it is in basketball?
Well, first of all, you can't do that anymore. You can't hire a family member.
No, not immediate family. I'm talking like.
That's right. Yeah. No, but it's, and I, you know, you can't generalize either. I mean, I've got, over the course of the last 10 years of being a head coach, there's as many single-parent homes as there are two-parent homes, maybe more. Some no-parent homes. Some grandmother, aunt, uncle, friend, guardian. So everybody's situation is unique. I think what's important is your relationship with that young man, and then when he gets on your campus, clearly defining expectations because of their background. The way you grew up may not be as acceptable to things on this campus as the way he grew up. And so you can't take for granted anything. So we're constantly in the business of educating. We're constantly in the business of mentoring, and clearly defining expectations, and then and holding people to standards. And those standards, what you may take for granted or what you think is normal, some places they aren't. And that's where the educational piece comes in for us as mentors and as coaches, not just on the football field, but in daily life.
And then from being in the SEC and now Pac-12 and being also at Houston, what did you notice in terms of how quickly the recruiting landscape changed, in terms of how fast things are going, kids getting offered younger and younger, starting to restrict that? Just what's your take on the whole recruiting landscape?
Well, it's been really, that recruiting landscape hadn't really changed in the state of Texas. I mean, it was early. It was that way for a long time. And so the evaluation process has been moved up because basically this, the ability to evaluate official visit and sign guys earlier has moved the evaluation piece up. And it's just a natural order of things. You move things up 6 months, right? Then you've got to evaluate this guy 6 months earlier. That puts him as a sophomore. So, that's where it is. And I think that calendar is still evolving. We have probably had, I don't know, 7 or 8, 6 or 7 official visits back in June, which is the first year for that. So, that calendar is different. I think it's one that everybody's got to adapt to, but you're going to have to because of the early signing date. People have asked me that just about wherever I've been. I think, my expectation is to win. So I really haven't, I guess this sounds kind of harsh, but I really haven't cared what everybody else's expectations are. I understand, what the consequences are, believe me, of not winning. So I set the bar high for our program. I set the bar high for our players, and then, it's the way I've always done things. And no matter what that was, as an assistant coach, as a coordinator, as a head coach. So, the only pressure that you have is what you put on yourself, and our players understand that too.
What memories do you have from being at Washington State and coaching under Mike Price and interviewing for the job in 2008?
Allegedly. So you guys have got all these interviews that I was supposed to be on. You guys don't know that for sure. All right, I'll clear that up right now.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. No, it was my first job. But first, I was in private business and came to Washington State in the Pac-10 as a graduate assistant. He hired me, and Joe Tiller, who was the defensive coordinator at Purdue when I was a player, ironically was hired as the offensive coordinator there, and Mike Zimmer was the defensive coordinator. And so, and me and Chris Ball, who's coaching, and Greg Olson, who's the coordinator at Oakland Raiders, we were the GAs. We did all the other work and washed cars and did whatever we did besides football. But loved the time there, and had some great friends, even in administration. Jim Livengood was the athletic director, who ended up going to Arizona, ironically. Chris Del Conte was in there at Texas as athletic director. We were a lot of really close friends and guys that were there. So they always indebted. Mike gave me an opportunity, and so did Joe. And then Joe hired me in his first head coaching job at Wyoming. I went there as the wide receiver coach, and it seems like it is. 30 years ago. So it's a long time ago, but I'm happy to be back.
You brought up Joe Tiller, and that's actually what I came up here to ask. What does his legacy mean to you? What did he kind of leave behind for you, and how has he impacted you?
Well, it's I think people have heard me say, but that besides my dad, he had the biggest impact on me. I mean, I knew him since I was 18 years old. So played for him at a time where, you know, the defense, only one guy could come to the sideline, and, you know, not the whole team, and he would talk, and then, you know, actually had a role, he and Mike Price being a defensive player and him being a defensive coordinator. We got there, he was the OC, and he and Mike actually moved me to offense and became the head junior varsity coach, and had a guy named Drew Bledsoe who was pretty good playing against some junior college guys. And Mike said, you know, if you learn this offense and you know what you're doing, and your job is to get this guy ready, because he's going to play for us this year. And I said, all right. He said, he goes, if you do that, you're probably going to have a job the rest of your life. He said, if he gets hurt or you don't win these games, then you'll never coach again. So that was the kind of pressure. That's pressure. See, when you don't have anything, but from right away. So, but that was it's a great, you know, I had a great time there, and got great friends there still.
Coach, I want to ask you about the opener, BYU. Kind of an interesting game. They're trying to bounce back. Looks like they're changing some things. Brought a new coordinator in. The challenge when you're this first game, and it's for them too, because they're up against you guys. But
that's right.
Yeah, but how do you prepare when you know things are going to be different the other way? The challenges of that first game.
I mean, that's all the time. We go through this every year. Whether it's coordinators, whether it's new teams, whether it's, you know, most of the time you are playing a out-of-conference opponent the first game of the year of some sort. And then, you know, there's usually new coordinators. You got different things that you go through tape, you go through video, you look at different scenarios. But, you know, I think more than anything else, early in the year, you watch a lot of games, and particularly early in the year, more games are lost than won. And by that I mean you have to take care of yourself, right? And eliminate penalties, eliminate turnovers, and miscues, and give yourself a chance. You don't have to be perfect, but you know, there's a big sign in our building that says it's about us, and it's not an arrogant thing. It's about, hey, we worry about us, because the opponents are going to change every week. Let's make sure that what we're doing is as sound as it can be, and then we're doing it at the best of our ability, and eliminating the types of things that can give games away. And that's really, really important early in the year.
Good luck.
All right, thank you.
What's the biggest difference that you've noticed so far with Khalil versus the other quarterbacks that you've coached in the past?
He's really fast. How's that? No, he's, you know, he's a guy that's he's really explosive. I think that what he's moving towards, as we were talking about and we talked about in the spring, you know, moving from being an athlete that's playing quarterback to being a quarterback that's an athlete, if that makes sense. And how do you do that? You know, and that's called, you know, studying the game, you know, becoming a student of the game, working and becoming a leader and accepting those roles. When you're the backup quarterback, you know, it's really kind of a cool position, because, you know, you really got nothing to lose when you go in. You don't get yanked. You just go back to where you were, right? So there's a little different pressure when you're a starter, and it comes with the things that are expected of you, and not just on the field, but off the field and on the sideline, and so that growth is taking place, because, you know, as great as his numbers are, he's really a young player and hasn't played a lot, and so there's still a lot of room for improvement for him. I think he understands that, and is working hard in wanting to be a great quarterback. Well, you know, we're going to have to, we're managing that too, you know, because of his size, you know, and there's definitely a role. You know, we have to and to your point, I think, you know, as our recruiting philosophy is going right now, we have got to build more depth on both sides of the ball in our interior. And so, you know, with his size, you know, there's obviously going to be, you'd like to have him 100%. And we'll see where it is. I mean, you know, you get back, summertime was really, really important in managing not only his rehab, but managing his weight. Right? So, you know, and then, you know, Coach Johnson's doing a good job, but we'll see where he is, and then we'll get an update on where we are probably first week of camp.
Tradition is so important in football, but sometimes when you come to a program that has struggled to meet its expectations, you want to change things up a little bit. I know Mike Leach put a beach up in Pullman to get them more conditioned. Have you changed things up at all as far as a tradition? I know Bear Down's a big thing there, but have you done anything differently or to get the fans up or the players up?
No, I think I've done just the opposite. I think one of the first phone calls I had was with Dick Tomey, and one of the, you know, during a very, very successful period at Arizona, and really just kind of got his lay of the land and of how things worked when and how he was successful there and the way he did things, and then really tried to, during spring football, had an invitation for previous players and the players that were in Desert Storm, and looking back on, hey, look, let's rekindle this spirit. I want you around the program. It was an exciting time when you guys were here, and we want to make it an exciting time again. How do you do that? What does that look like? And that outreach with the players and having them close to our players to feel that. We might even have even a uniform or two down the road with a throwback deal. So I'm going just the opposite. We're looking for those days.
So you're hinting at a new uniform.
Maybe sometime, but maybe not this year. Maybe not this year, but I think there's one coming.
When you were looking at this job, or maybe when you got it, what were your feelings about having a quarterback like Khalil to work with?
It didn't hurt. I put it that way. So it really wasn't. I'll just tell you this. It was less about players than it was about the administration. And I thought that the vision, like I said earlier, the vision of Dr. Robbins and of Dave Hickey was outstanding, and it's championship vision, and their ability to articulate that and what they were looking for in a football program, and as a coach, matched the philosophy that I had, and it was a great opportunity. I had been out and I'd seen it before. We'd shared ideas with Rich, and so visually I kind of understood the place, and it was just the right fit at the right time. And like I said, it was more about our administration than it was about one player.
Historically, when you look at the Pac-12, the conference is done best when there's a lot of experience across quarterback. You could probably say that about any conference.
I think that's true in Little League too. Yeah. So then whatever that is.
But now you've got eight returning starters this season. So how important is it to have someone who's got that experience at quarterback?
But we'll see. I've had teams that weren't very experienced, that have done well. I've had, obviously, experienced teams, that have been battle-tested and have seen things and gone through the fire, so to speak. So, but as I've told people before, I had a coach that used to say all the time, not all experience is good experience, right? So, we're still going to have guys that are going to compete for positions. I think the new redshirt rule is excellent for players to be able to create more depth, to play guys in any of those 4 games during the year, which is going to, add to player safety. And the way I see it, because of guys being able to get less reps, get them on and off the field, and get the young guys ready to go and keep guys fresh. So we're going to look for those experienced players to lead us. But in any great team and any team that's been a really good football team, depth becomes important, and the only way to do that is to play some of these younger guys.
Coach, are there any key positions you can identify at this moment that can help you guys actually continue this season and finish better than you guys did last season?
I don't know. I think it's something that we're a work in progress. You have 15 practices in the spring, and it's really kind of hard to know who you are. You got the 28 or 29 days here coming up that's going to really kind of define what we are. So that question, I think we'll be able to answer that a little bit better here in the next couple, 3 weeks.
What do you think about the proposal of mandatory injury reports?
Mandatory injury reports. Well, you know me. I've never been one to put one out. So I think you know where I stand on that. I tell you what, it's kind of a catch-22. If you've got the mandatory injury report, it's different. I understand it at the professional level, but there's also in some situations in some schools and with FERPA and things that are different in a collegiate environment than they are in a professional environment that may or may not be legal to disclose those types of things. So I think the jury's still out on that. I think there's some legal ramifications either way. And whatever happens, we're going to abide by it. But I've never disclosed injury information in 10 years of being a head coach. It could be, yes, it could be. But I think there's some legal issues either way, and we'll see what happens. But whatever happens, we're going to abide by it. So we're in a time of a little bit of change with rules and things like that. So, but like I said, I think legally either way, there's some issues that are going to have to be worked out. I don't know about that. I think if you're saying it's a player safety issue, and then you're saying that you're not trusting the coach or the training staff of that institution to play players that are hurt, and so I'd be very careful with that assumption, because nobody cares more about the players than those trainers and those coaches, and it's just a different time. But it's never been an issue. And like you said, I think there's some outside factors that have really nothing to do with what's going on the field and collegiate institutions that are driving this discussion.
Traditionally, Southern Arizona has belonged to U of A.
We've got 2 minutes remaining with Arizona.
Suburbs have been ASU fighting off Wolves. You've been one of those Wolves coming into Arizona, getting players, good players, to go out to Texas A&M. What's the plan as far as continuing,
So you said what now? The Southern Arizona was what?
Southern Arizona has typically belonged to University of Arizona.
Yeah.
And Central Arizona has typically been ASU fighting off everybody coming in.
Right.
You were one of those guys that was coming in and getting players, and now you're at Arizona. Is that going to be something that you try to expand Wildcat country to the rest of the state?
We would like to recruit the whole state. So, that's where we are. I think the high school football has continued to improve in the state. There's a lot of new high schools, a lot of people moving there, great coaching, and obviously we've had some success at other places, and with Arizona high school football players, and because of those relationships that we already had, we're hoping to expand on those and get more of those guys to Tucson.
So Khalil obviously had a great season last year. What have you seen in him, and what are some of the things you've asked him to improve on, or what can he improve on, should I say, for this upcoming?
He's a very, very young player, and it's just like I said a few minutes ago. He's only played in 7 or 8 games. We went through a whole list of things, Coach Mazzoni and him, about growing as a leader, growing as being a student of the game. That is very, very inexperienced. So there are plenty of things that he can work on to get better, and fortunately, he's the kind of guy that wants to work on those things.